Welcome to the AbundaCulture channel. The Bible provides pathways to abundance. God is pleased when we succeed abundantly and share generously. AbundaCulture uses the family homestead as a platform to provide 5 basic needs: affordable housing, renewable energy, clean water, healthy food, and safe sanitation. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out our AbundaCulture.org website and download our free training manual. Hello. Today we're going to build a sub-irrigated planter. I have several video presentations about the SIP, sub-irrigated planter, because it's the best way that I've found to grow lots of food with a little work. And our goal has always been grow as much food as you can with as little work as you can. The other thing that a SIP does that's really important is that it uses somewhere between 50 to 75% less water. And in most of the places that I've been, water is really scarce. So we're going to show you today exactly how it's done. And of course, you can find all this information in the AbundaCulture training manual, and my producer will put up the pages right now. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoy this presentation.
All right, we're ready to go here. This is my 55-gallon plastic barrel. We get these barrels, usually we buy them used. They cost about 25 bucks here in the US. When they're used, and you have to be careful about what they contained. These had soap or food products, bulk food products in them, so they're real easy to wash out. You have to stay away from harsh chemicals and so forth. It looks white, but they call this natural. What it does, it allows the sun to come through, and it acts just like a greenhouse. I also have a piece of 3-inch pipe, which is going to be our fill tube, where we're going to put the water into our SIP. And I have my tools here. I need a good permanent marker there. And you're going to need a heavy-duty saw for this. This is a 15-amp skill saw. Much less than that, and it'll bog down, and you'll just burn up your saw. It's a tough material to cut, so I recommend that you get at least a 15-amp skill saw. And then I need my sawhorse and my ear protection. You don't want to be deaf like me, so use that ear protection. All right, now we're going to show you how we're going to cut this barrel. It's really important that you do this just right. You notice that the barrel has an indent right here. Right here, that's the skinniest place on this barrel. And if we cut that right there, then we will be able to flip this lid over that we're creating, and we need this lid as a part of the whole SIP operation. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark that at the very thinnest place right there all the way around. This just makes it easier to see. Now we're ready to cut this barrel, and I've laid it on here, and you'll see how I just kind of walk it along. It's kind of nice to have a helper when you do this, and he can kind of control the barrel for you while you're operating that saw, because it is a tough cut, and you really have to be careful not to let that saw buck on you. Here we go! Well, I've cut most of it with my skill saw, but there are a few places right here where you have the holes. They're real thick, so I need my reciprocating saw to get through those 2 tough places. Well, we got her cut off. It was a little tough, but we got her done. And now, you see, we're going to take this. This is how it was.
And now we can just flip it over and it makes a nice secure lid. And that's going to be important to keep insects and animals out, and also to keep out cold temperatures and wind if you live in a place that freezes. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the fill tube. This is the fill tube. It's 3 inches. You can use a 2-incher, but I like it pretty big because then if you're watering with a bucket, you can just dump it in there really quickly. And if you got a lot of these, that really saves a lot of time. So this is our fill tube, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut this. We want it to be just a little shorter than the bucket so we can put the lid on. So I'm marking it there so it's a little shorter, and that's going to be the length of our fill tube. All right, now we're going to cut the bottom of the fill tube. We've already cut it to the proper length, and here's how we do the bottom. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it about halfway through. You'll watch and see. See how I cut that about halfway through. Then I'm going to take and go this way, and this way, and that's the cut we want on our fill tube. You can see that. When we put it into our barrel, we're going to put it in. Here's the wall of the barrel, and this will allow a space for the water. We're going to cover this end with an old sock or something so that the water can get out of the fill tube, but dirt can't fill it back in. Now, I wanted to show you my fill tube. On the end here, I just used an old t-shirt, which is about 65% polyester. If you try to use 100% cotton as your cloth in these, the cotton will rot real quickly. But if it has polyester or rayon or something like that in it, it'll last for a long time. So what I've done is I've covered up the hole there so that the water can come out, but the dirt can't fill it in. The next thing that we're going to do is create a reservoir in the bottom of our sub-irrigated planter. If you look down here, you'll see that I've got a bunch of sturdy plastic bottles. It's important that these bottles be very sturdy because the weight of the dirt that you're going to put on top of them will just collapse anything that's really weak. So these guys are pretty strong, and I'm going to take the lids off, take off all the lids, and then I'm also going to drill a hole. I want the water to be able to pass very freely through this, and they're going to lay on their sides down in the bottom of the barrel. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the weep holes in this barrel. The way this works is you put the water down the fill tube, it fills across the bottom of the barrel where you have created your reservoir, and then it weeps out. The water will start to run out of that weep hole. The minute it starts coming out of the weep hole, it's watered. You don't do any more. And that's where you save so much water. There's no need to waste the water. The minute it comes out there, you're done. So we're going to put the weep hole the same distance right at the top of where our reservoir is. Don't try to make it too deep in an effort to maybe water less frequently, because if you get it too deep, the roots don't like it. So I found that it works best. We've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years, trying to figure out all the ins and outs of this, and we found the best way to do it is make the reservoir about this deep. That's where I'm going to put my weep holes. I'm going to put a couple of them in there with a 3/4 inch bit. So there's my weep hole. Now, these are what I'm going to use for my reservoir, as you recall. And I put a 3/4 inch hole in those. I'm going to lay it like this, with this on the bottom, so the water can go freely in and out of this reservoir. Here's my fill tube inside my barrel, and I've taken a cover for all the reservoir. In this case, it's just an old shirt, which is again about 65% polyester, and I carefully cover up all of the reservoir so the water can go through the dirt and down into the reservoir, but the dirt can't fill up the reservoir. And I put it in very carefully around the edges so that the dirt can't fill that in. I have my weep hole, which is in a place where I can see it very easily, because when I water that, as soon as that water comes out that weep hole, I want to stop watering. And I have the fill tube on the opposite side, so the water will go all the way across and fill up the whole reservoir. I've just got one barrel in place now. When I put in some more barrels, I'm going to leave at least a foot or so between the barrels, because the plants grow in this system and they become great in size. They're enormous, and so you need space to be able to get to them and to get around it. So there you are. I've got it up against a fence here. I live in a pretty windy area, and that'll give it a little bit of protection. And then of course I'll put the top on to protect it from the wind and the cold and from insects and animals. I have a lot of squirrels around here, and they would absolutely just tear things up. So I'll keep that cover on there until the plant is way up over the top, and then I'll have to figure out another way of keeping those doggone rascally squirrels away. So that is the SIP planter. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put 100% compost to fill it up, and that's the next thing, and I'll show you that. We've got the SIP all filled up with 100% compost, no soil, because the soil will compact so hard it'll be like a piece of concrete and the plants will not grow. It needs to be very light and fluffy, and the compost will do that for you. Plus, the compost is pure nutrients. The soil, in a lot of cases, if you have poor soil, it does little more than hold up the plant. So you notice it's about half full, and that'll allow me to plant big plants in there like tomato plants, eggplants, peppers, etc. I'll take you and show you here. Remember, it's going to get quite heavy when it's all filled up. There's the fill tube. So you get that thing where you want it, because it's going to weigh a couple of 100 pounds now, and you don't want to have to lug it around. I'm going to put the lid on to keep the animals and the insects out, and I'll plant this later on today. I wanted to show you some other configurations that you might use. These barrels here were cut in half. They start out as 30-gallon drums. Cut them in half and made 2 SIP planters rather than 1. Same principles, basically. And these were just about a fourth of the planter. In these I would plant lettuce and so forth. In the half size, it's real good for carrots and onions and so forth. And then these are some 30-gallon drums that are already planted with tomatoes and peppers. Well, that's how you build a SIP planter. I sure hope you'll give them a try. You'll find that you'll be amazed at how much food you can produce in a small area. Well, keep your hands in the dirt and your eyes on Jesus.
We're all in a master plan, though the things we do are just grains of sand. When these things are touched by the master's hand, then our lives turn into mountains in a master plan.
All right, folks.
All right.
All right.
All right.
All right.
All right.
All right.